also for the CFS process that we are working at the moment. A key component of this effort will be to increase awareness of the committee outside Rome, and also of, and we also would like to promote the utilization, implementation of the CFS policy products at the global, regional, and national level, which actually, as you know, that we have invested our times, our energies through the policy convergent process, and also for the negotiation until the policy products were adopted. The recent one is the voluntary guideline on food system and nutrition. But we just only finished our, just only half of our job. We still have the second half to finalize, that we need to promote the uptake, implementation, and utilization of those policies that we produce, that you, all of you, invested your time, your energies through the long process. And this today discussions can also help to inform the Secretariat efforts with respect to the communications, outreach, and also resource mobilizations, starting with the recently adopted voluntary guideline on food system and nutrition, but also for other ongoing and upcoming work stream contained in the CFS multi-year program of work that already approved by the committee during the plenary, because we want to have the clear directions. And that's why if you also have an opportunity to read the CFS evaluation report and implementation of the response to the evaluation in 2018, I think some of you remembers this document very well, which actually there are several points that the committee gave us the recommendation, that we have the 7 key elements that we need to move forward to make sure that we can strengthen the effectiveness of CFS. And that's why we come to today's meeting. This informal open-ended working group is open to all CFS members, including bureau members, as was requested during the meeting, and also the ad hoc advisory group, and also others, your UN agencies. In this respect, I thank those of you who share the invitation with your constituencies, with your regional group, and also thank you for joining us this morning. You probably know that we are in a critical moment for the committee. The UN Food System Summit is prompting important questions about the post-summit accountabilities, what we're going to do after the summit ends, and also in place to address the 2030 agenda for SDG 2, zero hunger, and other related goals. As pointed out by some members and participants, CFS was left out at the beginnings of the summit preparation, but now CFS joined has been appointed as the advisory committee of the Food System Summit, and also the chair of the steering committee of HLPE, is part of a scientific group of the UN Food System Summit. That has been corrected, as all of us know, but this point, it also point to a serious question about just how impactful the committees truly is. And that's why we need to move forward, how the CFS can provide support for the summit, pre-summit, and also post-summit accountabilities. It is very clear to me the CFS is largely unknown outside Rome. CFS, we are talking here in Rome. Welcome our Ambassador Hukavin as well. I saw you on screen and also others, which actually right now it's just only 5 of us keep the video on. Some others still somewhere. But we know that you are listening to us and we are very happy to see all of you. Welcome back, PSM, Selke, Saka, Martin, Rudy, and also Stephanie from WFP and EFAT as well. Or, okay, our friend from Russian Federation, he's still driving safe to the office. And I know that you are listening to all of us. Thank you very much for joining this morning. As I told you, I can give you an example in Thailand. Before taking this responsibility as the chair of CFS, frankly speaking, very few known about CFS. Nobody know much about this, the Committee on World Food Securities, what the role of the CFS. Some of them know that, okay, they came to attend the meeting every year during the World Food Day, and then they return home and doing their usual business or usual life. Not so many people know about CFS, and that's why today we want to really discuss how to strengthen the effectiveness of the CFS at the country level. And all of you as a members, as a CFS participants can help us to improve the CFS effectiveness and the role of CFS. And that's why we are at a critical important junction. As I mentioned earlier, the pre-summit, the press release are just from yesterday, the press release also just came out yesterday. It is a time to step up and reconsider the way we all do our business. And also, if you remember, during the regional conference, the FAO Director Generals mentioned several times publicly during this FAO regional conference last year, at our special and also at the special events in October last year as well. It would be useful for CFS to focus on translating our policy products into actions and results on the ground. And he also mentioned that he would like to see bigger, greater impact that CFS can provide support to the work of the 3 Rome-based agencies, FAO, EFAT, and WFP. And also we would like to thank WFP. And yes, last years, the WFP invited CFS to talk first time with the WFP country office around the world to know about CFS policy products and how the CFS can work with the WFP country office and how can use the CFS policy product to make an impact, to make the result and better outcome at the country level. And also we would like to thank EFAT as well to develop the database of all the policy products that we produce so far and how we can use at the ground level. And we really appreciate, because the 3 Rome-based agencies is our supporters financially and technically, and we will continue working with you how to promote the implementation of the voluntary guideline on food system and nutrition. And also I would like to mention during the WFP Executive Board meeting, Ambassador Hukavin, the chair of the open-ended working group of the voluntary guideline, also mentioned during the meeting to ask WFP to provide additional support for the uptake and implementation of the voluntary guideline itself. And that's why the CFS members set the committee agenda and program of work. It is the 3 Rome-based agency that provide the funding to make our work possible. but we need to make more impact and also to see a greater outcome. And that's why today we would like to brainstorm and also to test this new idea to enhance the effectiveness of the Committee on World Food Securities, enhance awareness at all levels of the CFS policy convergent process from start to finish, and considers how to look beyond the negotiation of our products to promoting and fostering their meaningful uptake, utilization, and implementation at the ground level. And I would like, before we start our discussion this morning, I would like to ask the CFS Secretary, Chris Hagedorn, to give us the introductions of today's meeting and also additional information and also the next step that we plan to do after this open-ended working group meeting today, at least to make sure at the end of the meeting you have a clear views, and also through the transparent and inclusive process of our discussion can ensure that we will bring the issue back to discuss at the Bureau and Advisory Group meeting to ensure that we can step forward to have a better effectiveness of the CFS. Thank you very much. Chris, the floor is yours.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and great to see everyone this morning. Thank you, especially during a busy time, to join us. And it's good to see there are 38 of us with us this morning, and it's a good selection. We have the 3 RBAs with us. I see some of the evaluation staff. We have CSM and PSM, a number of member states, bureau members and others, and a number from the advisory group. I see WHO and Gates and others. So I think this is a good start. We obviously, as the chair is saying, are starting from the basic principle that I think we all share, which is we want to see CFS maximize its performance and contribute as much as possible to SDG 2. I think the summit brings a lot of these questions to bear because I think there are a lot of conversations going on, as the chair said, around how the institutions and how the platforms that exist can contribute to zero hunger and malnutrition. So thank you again for joining us. And I think we also have a number of you who have been here with CFS for many years. And so that experience will be extremely helpful in this informal conversation. And obviously our goal, we're starting from the, before I get into more of this, I want to mention we are recording today's discussion, the link to which we will put on our website. If anybody feels they would like the recording turned off when they speak, we can do that, but just to flag that we are recording today's discussion. So, as some of you well know, efforts to promote CFS accountability and share best practices at global, regional, national levels is part of the committee's work that goes back to the reform documents of 2009. I do see some new faces, so this will be a learning experience for some of us here today. But we recognize that an essential starting point for this conversation, as was discussed in the last Bureau meeting, is Annex C of the response to the CFS evaluation report and previous plenary documents linked to the monitoring and CFS evaluation. So the accountability and learning role is, as the CFS chair noted, embedded in the CFS multi-year program of work and is delivered through a number of activities developed and agreed by plenary through a consultative process after the evaluation. So many of you know the consensus-based flexible CFS monitoring framework described in that annex, Annex C, includes 3 core components. The first, A, is to follow up and review of FSN, food security nutrition trends at all levels. The second is the assessment of the effectiveness of CFS, particularly at a global level. And 3, or C, the use and application of policy products and recommendations at all levels. So that document states that, quote, this framework represents a mechanism of innovative incremental monitoring approaches that CFS has undertaken or could undertake in the future to deliver on Role 5 of the reform document on promoting accountability and sharing of best practices at all levels. So CFS has already regularly fosters discussions on the status of food security and nutrition at global and sometimes country or region specific levels, including the presentation of SOFI reports. In the past, we've conducted open surveys. We encourage voluntary monitoring at national level, and we hold global thematic events on key flagship documents and some of our other policy recommendations in plenary. And we did that on the framework for action, as you recall, in February. So as noted by the chair, there's no intention to reopen that very complex, and I think our Russian colleague said at the last meeting, fragile consensus. So, we are aware of that, and others can speak to that. I think our CSM colleagues at the last Bureau and Advisory Group meeting referenced that. So rather, we want to follow up on our shared responsibility and explore how we can complement ongoing activities of CFS to better and comprehensively fulfill the role to promote accountability and sharing of best or good practices and lessons. So our suggestion is consider together, particularly the assessment of CFS effectiveness, because that's an area that really has not been a focus so much of our work. But as the chair said, there are many good reasons and rationales to do that. And with your participation, we can review what has been tried and suggest options to optimize how we promote CFS processes and products, including with our outreach and communication work. Clearly, the Secretariat is working very hard to promote CFS, and you'll see that in our website, which has just been updated and strengthened. So I hope you will look at that today. And we have an immediate opportunity, as the chair said, to put our ideas into practice with the latest products that CFS has just adopted, the voluntary guidelines on food systems and nutrition. Thank you, Hans, and everyone for their role in that. And also, we are starting negotiations on the policy recommendations on agroecological and other innovative approaches. When those are adopted on June 4th, again, we will be looking to put into practice our strengthened outreach, our strengthened communications, but that's a function that we all, and a responsibility that all members of CFS, from the Bureau, from the membership to the advisory group have. So at this point, I think let me introduce Ms. Elise Benoit on the CFS Secretariat staff. She's on loan to us from WFP. She's a senior evaluation specialist. Elise, if your video is on or not on, please put it on so you can say hello. There you are. Elise joined us in September, and this is an area that she's worked on for many years at WFP. And so that is valuable experience we want to take advantage of. So at this point, I think it's best to open the floor to participants, Mr. Chair, and see what types of questions, comments, and ideas that people brought to the meeting. Thank you. Over.
Thank you very much, Chris, for introduction, and also thank you for Elise for your effort to support us on these issues, how to strengthen the effectiveness of the CFS. And that's why today we have the 2 hours meeting, start from 9 to 11. We have to ensure that we start promoting effectiveness of the CFS by finishing our meeting, our conversation by 11 o'clock. Okay, now the floor is yours. Okay, anyone would like to break the ice for this morning discussions?
I want to call on the RBAs possibly as
sure. Maybe I would like to call for our advisory committee member first. I see Ifat is ready to start. Please, Ifat.
Thank you very much, Chair, for calling this meeting in the first place. An extremely important, I would say, milestone event after the evaluation of 2018, and in the context of really assessing the effectiveness, as you mentioned, of CFS. Thank you for your introduction, and thank you, Secretary Chris, also for your own introduction to this meeting. And it sets the stage for our discussion today. I would start by saying that we are increasingly in a competitive grants system as grant resources are becoming more and more scarce. And investors in bodies, platforms like CFS, agricultural research, and others, other activities, are asking for the value for money and looking for what happens after their investment. CFS conventionally doesn't lend itself to that kind of assessment. In terms of relevance, for instance, is very, very high up there. No question about it. Food security and nutrition are important objectives, and the CFS is considered to be the foremost multi-stakeholder platform negotiating and approving extremely important policy products in that context. But the key question that people are asking is, what happens after that? How does the CFS move those products off the shelf? And my starting, let's say, position is not to go too much into evaluation criteria, which are very draconian and perhaps a tall order. In the first instance, probably what we should do is to measure or try and assess how these policy products are utilized or put into use. That is our primary consideration, because the rest then follows. So if we can focus on and try and assess in some kind of an objective and quantifiable way that all of those really important policy products, and there are two this year coming up, as the CFS Secretary mentioned, the voluntary guidelines on food systems and nutrition, and then the one that's forthcoming, extremely important, both in terms of transformation of the food system on the one hand, and the other one, again, extremely important in terms of approaches, in terms of innovation and and agroecological approaches, which are extremely important in terms of nature positive agriculture. The point is, how can we develop some kind of a systematic approach and a system that goes a little bit beyond monitoring, but falls short of evaluation, ex post evaluation, because that's really too much and it's very difficult. What we're looking for is some kind of an effectiveness indicator based on putting the CFS policy products into use. And that's why I'll probably come back later to explain further what I'm trying to say. And that's why IFAD focused sharply last year on the database that you mentioned, Mr. Chair. The idea being that the database would trigger the use of those policy products in our policy documents, like the country strategy and policy papers of IFAD. That drives our investment portfolio at the end of the day. So if we are able to run a tracer and show that CFS policy products are explicitly referred to in the COSOPs of IFAD, in the CSPs of WFP and the CPFs of FAO, then there's an automaticity that they will somehow be utilized at the project level where the rubber hits the road, at the front lines of rural development, where the rural poor people are impacted by policies, institutions, technologies, etc. So our primary consideration here is really about the use and application of CFS policy products, first and foremost. If you're able to demonstrate that, then a lot will follow later on. Then it's a matter of communication, Mr. Chair, as you mentioned, better communication, better visibility of the CFS will come automatically after that. So this is my opening, but I'll come back later on when we start discussing the tools, etc.
Thank you very much, Ifat Chantanu, for your start. I think it's very useful for us, and also we sure that you will come for the second times after others are already addressed. Now I would like to give the floor to FAO or WFP if you are willing to share some views before giving the floor to others, because now today we give the floor to everyone. Okay, FAO first, please. I see Mark.
Okay, thank you and good morning, everyone. I was going to yield to Stephanie of WFP, but I'll go ahead. Just a few, I guess, opening comments, but thanks for organizing this. And as we all know, this is an important topic that's been ongoing in CFS for many years, so it's good to continue this discussion. And as the Secretary pointed out earlier, it's building on Annex C and looking at the way forward, especially in that second pillar, which is looking at CFS effectiveness. So thanks for pulling this together. And just a couple of initial comments that, and I don't want to go back too far in history, but we did do an online survey in 2014 to look at CFS effectiveness. Some of you were involved in that. And so one thing would be to sort of look at that survey, and it's even indicated in the Annex C matrix, that look at doing periodic online surveys to get a quick feel for the use and application of CFS products. So that's something just to highlight that. And also just to highlight the strong link to outreach and communication. And I think we've learned over the years, and I think I'd like to highlight this, that we need outreach and visibility before we're going to see use and application. And the reason I say that is through various surveys, through people's discussions, we know that CFS products are not as well known as we would like, especially at national level. And so I think the focus on the communication outreach strategy is critical to make sure that we have ongoing periodic dialogues. In fact, I'm just thinking out loud, take advantage of the food system dialogues that are coming up to make sure that CFS products are discussed, mentioned, highlighted in those dialogues where relevant, especially for the food system dialogue discussion. And many of them could be introduced in those discussions, again, as a way to build visibility, let people know what CFS has done in the context of preparing for the food system dialogues. And I think this is an ongoing thing. It has been, I'll say, a weak point in CFS over the years that we never put enough effort and resources into communication and outreach. But I think now is a real opportunity to do that, especially we've all learned in COVID and pandemic how to do things online, et cetera. So that's key to make sure the visibility is there before we look at effectiveness. And then just a cautionary note, technically, let's be careful with the terms that we use in what we're doing. Like we learned in the monitoring response to the evaluation, many things CFS does, we're monitoring like. And I think we even have that language in Annex C, where there's the 3 different pillars, 5 or 6 different ways that we look at monitoring like activities, none of which are monitoring in the classic sense of you have a baseline, you measure something against the baseline, that's sort of classic monitoring. CFS doesn't do that, probably can't do that, but it does monitoring like things. And the same with impact. Impact in M&E jargon is the last thing that you measure. It's the most difficult thing to measure. So I think we should be cautious in using impact. What we're looking at more is, do we influence policy? Can we influence? Again, if the products are known and visible, are they actually influencing policy? Impact is a much more difficult thing to measure, much further down the road. And so it's just a cautionary note of, like we used monitoring for many years and all had different opinions of it. I think we should be cautious with the term impact as well. But that's all I have to say for now. I'm looking forward to the discussion and dialogue. Over.
Yeah, thank you very much, FAO, Mark, for your intervention and also for your suggestion. It's very useful for us to look on that particular issues carefully. Now I give the floor to WFP, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me well?
Yeah, very well. We can hear you very well. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, but Stephanie is having connectivity issues, and the same applies to me. So if you allow me, I will just relay our main messages on this.
Yeah, happy. Yeah.
No, just very much in line with what Shantanu and Mark said, and just a couple of minor points. In addition, we are very much supportive of the establishment of this informal working group and pursuing this exercise. As you know, Chair, WFP is already stepping up its efforts in assessing how internally we are using and applying the CFS policy products, especially at the moment with the guidelines on food systems and nutrition. As you also recall, the assessment of the CFS effectiveness represents the second pillar of the innovative monitoring mechanism of CFS included in the evaluation plan of action. We perhaps, just as a suggestion, will advise to ensure a manageable workload for this exercise because this is critical for ensuring the full implementation of the MIPO. And we very much stand ready to support this process alongside FAO and IFAD, putting together our expertise with evaluation colleagues and others to make this working group working effectively. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, WFP, for your suggestion and also to ensure that we won't have a burden of the workload for this work. Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to members and also advisory group and also others who would like to take the floor. Now the floor is open for all of you. If you want to take the floor, please raise your hand, click your hand, raise hand button. Yeah. For the new version, it should be somewhere in the reaction. Now I give the floor to Netherlands, followed by Germany, please. Netherlands, please.
Thank you very much, Tanawat, and good morning to you all. Good to see you all. I think it is a very, not only very important, but very needed session we have. And I echo many things which were already said by the previous speakers. I think it's very important when you look how to elevate, I would say, the position of CFS and of course also the products, is that we of course have to look to the national level, how to get recommendations and guidelines implemented. And perhaps there we should look also to, I think, a momentum which we have with the World Food Systems Summit in preparation. We will have the Peace Summit here in Rome and we will have the summit in New York. And we see, of course, that at this moment, in 50 or 60 countries, we have national dialogues preparing the Food Systems Summit. And of course, the idea behind these dialogues is, and it was discussed yesterday in a smaller group within the European Union. These dialogues are, of course, multi-stakeholder dialogues. So I think that's a momentum to raise the profile of CFS as well as the outcomes of the recommendations and certainly the guidelines. But of course, it has to be done in those dialogues by all stakeholders, not only by government representatives, but also by private sector and also by civil society. So for that, I also look to our colleagues from CSM and PSM, because the stronger we mention in those dialogues outcomes of CFS, the more, I would say, leverage it will get. But I think it's also very important to see, because you have to ask the same question for outcomes of FVO, outcomes of IFAD and WFP, although they, of course, have country offices which can play a crucial role for the efficacy of the products of the CFS. But when you look to the broader question, how many UN outcomes and resolutions which are adopted are known at the country level or are reflected or implemented at the national level? Of course, we all say that we are committed, we'll implement them, but how do we see it? Now, I think this perhaps not to be negative, but I think it's a fact of life. It's a fact of life which we have to accept. But the more advocacy we do, as we have done for the guidelines, for example, via Twitter, etc., the better it is. But it's also making sure that the outcomes are reflected in documents, in official UN documents. For example, that we get recommendations and guidelines reflected in UN resolutions, not only, especially in New York, because then it's not only, I would say, the Rome-based crowd, but it are the ministries of foreign affairs, the heads of states, who are seeing the results of CFS. I think that's very important, because the more you're quoted, the more you're known. It's like also with authors of books. I think it's very important that we use the Food System Summit, the pre-summit and the summit for the advocacy of CFS and CFS products. And of course, what I've a little bit shocked about is when we look to the action tracks, and the Netherlands is actively participating in many of the action tracks, almost nowhere CFS products are mentioned by members. That's remarkable. And even I approached the three of the action track chairs. They were not aware of the voluntary guidelines on food systems and nutrition. And when you look to what they are now proposing, in the guidelines, there are more concrete proposals or issues in a concrete way agreed than what we see in the action track. So we have a lot of work to do to make sure that in the action tracks, they take on board the voluntary guidelines of food systems and nutrition. Even when one of the examples, breastfeeding, a lot has been discussed and said about breastfeeding. A lot has been said about food losses. A lot has been said about other things in a much more concrete way than I see in the action track. So we have a momentum, and I would say also a task to make sure that it is incorporated. Secondly, for us, at least for me, it's quite vague how the pre-summit will be organized and what possibilities we have. But it is important that we have, it's a podium, it should be a podium where we can present some of the results of the CFS, certainly related to food system, to our political leaders. And it is not only that we have statements, because statements are statements, but they should be reflected in the documentation. They should be reflected in the preparatory preparations and documents which go to the participants of the pre-summit. And the same counts, of course, for the summit itself. We have to approach the chairs of the action group. We have to approach the chair of the science group, that on all those tracks and the work of the science group, there is a reference, for example, to the voluntary guidelines of food system and nutrition, because that is at this moment the only, I would say, intergovernmental negotiated UN document available. last but not least, I think it's important that we look also to inclusivity. It's important that in all the work we are doing, that we take with, that we share and sit together with CSM and PSM in advocacy, that we have at least not perhaps the same advocacy, but that we have the advocacy to make sure that everything is known, what we are doing here. And in that sense, one perhaps crazy idea, but sometimes you need crazy creative ideas. All the meetings of CFS are always organized in Rome. And of course, Rome is a very, I would say, the UN capital for food issues. But why not sometimes organize a CFS meeting in New York or in Geneva? So that you broaden, because it is a UN committee. We can organize it in any UN city as we like. But for example, organizing it in New York broadens your possibility, your scope, and your advocacy within the UN. And certainly with the virtual possibilities we have, and we have seen it, I think, with negotiation of voluntary guidelines, but we see it also with agroecology, more and more capitals are involved and participating in the meetings. So why not make sure that our CFS outcomes are much more known in New York itself? And when we speak about human rights-based approaches, why not also make sure that they are known in Geneva? And that means that we should have events in those, at least those two UN capitals. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ambassador Hoekeveen, for your suggestion. I think several points will be taken promptly by Secretariat, and also we will discuss more with our Bureau member and advisory group as well. I just would like to inform you that last week I had an opportunity to have a meeting with a special envoy, Agnes Kalibata. We also addressed some issues about the CFS products in the action track as well. And as you mentioned, we should have the meeting with the chair of action track to address the issues with them. Perhaps it's a good idea as well. We took note all of your advice. Thank you. Now I give the floor to Germany, please.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone, and thank you, dear chair, and also thank you to the CFS Secretariat for setting up this informal working group in meeting, and for welcoming also non-CFS Bureau members in this exercise. Both is very much appreciated. At the outset, on behalf of Germany, I would like to say that we highly appreciate this initiative to start a conversation on how to assess the effectiveness of CFS products, and in this way also to strengthen the CFS effectiveness in itself. It would be good if this exercise could identify opportunities to systematically measure the impact of CFS products, to monitor use and application, and to increase the application of CFS products at country level. We'd like to thank the CFS chair and the CFS Secretariat for being proactive and taking the initiative in this regard, based on the Bureau decision back in November last year. We would like to express our thanks to them for what they have done so far. This includes also outlining the basic structure and giving thought to a possible roadmap and timeline, and sharing these proposals with the CFS Bureau and the advisory group as a starting point for discussion at the last Bureau and advisory group meeting. Listening to colleagues this morning, I would like to echo what was just been said by Hans Hoekeveen, And we really also believe that the summit and the pre-summit this year is a momentum to increase the visibility of the CFS and its products. And it's for sure a very good idea to for example, to outreach to the chairs of the action tracks and the scientific group, and so on, to make sure everybody is aware of the CFS, and in particular the voluntary guidelines, and to reference them. Furthermore, after carefully listening also to our colleagues from the three RBAs, it seems to be very important to accomplish this task, this exercise, in close cooperation with the experts from FAO, IFAD, and WFP, and to benefit from their experience in terms of monitoring, evaluation, application, and so on. Maybe I would like to ask two questions, if I may. If maybe the CFS Secretariat could elaborate a little bit more on the role of member states in this whole task, in this exercise. What do you expect from member states in this process? And just in case if there is a need to get capitals involved, we would much appreciate if sufficient time would be provided in advance. And then maybe, as this was also already raised, the issue of resources. Could you elaborate a little bit on what, if resources are available to complement, if there is a decision taken by the Bureau at the end of this process to complement the existing framework you just referred to. Yeah, that would be nice if you could answer those two questions, and then we are also looking forward for further discussion and debate. Thanks, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Germany. And the question that you asked about the role of member state and also the resources will be answered. I will ask our secretary to answer later. But anyway, I just would like to keep you informed that the meeting between the chair of the steering committee of the CFS HLPE with the chair of the scientific group of UN Food System Summit will be scheduled soon. I hope that they will meet and discuss between HLPE chair and the chair of the scientific group of UN Food System Summit by next week, and perhaps the coordinator of the CFS HLPE can update us on this issue later. Now I give the floor to CSM, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chair, and good morning, everybody. This topic of the use and application of the CFS policy instruments is quite key to the CSM. And therefore, the initiative in general to strengthen the use and application is for sure a very important one. Now, our constituencies are not so much interested into the other pillar of the innovative monitoring framework that Chris mentioned, in again evaluating the effectiveness. This is one of the pillars that is there, but we are not so interested in repeating the exercise of the evaluation, of the response to the evaluation, rather the implementation of the evaluation. I think that is this is the perspective that you have been mentioning, Chair, as well. I think the Rome Home Nexus is fundamental to us. Bringing Home Rome was the topic of a major event we organized together with Germany in 2017, and the results of these discussions also made it into the response to the evaluation. And maybe in addition to what Chris said, in the evaluation, there's also this other annex. It's the Annex E, is particularly on the use and application of CFS policy outcomes, because it was a big concern. And there are some very good ideas in this Annex E, which is also in the main response document that was at that time facilitated, as you remember, by China and Germany, Gianni and Oliver, very ably. So I would raise your attention to the implementation of that part of the evaluation as well. Because, for example, the first example that is there is having a better link to the national level. So how to do it is, for example, by having a repository of national platforms that are CFS-like, you know, this was a discussion. But also to have a reference point, or it is said, a focal point, CFS focal point at each country level. And then there are other ideas that were mentioned as well. I think the same direction as Shantanu said, to put all the efforts on use and application, not having a general like effectiveness discussion again in the CFS. We spent 2.5 years on that. So we now need to build on the evaluation results and the response to the evaluation, and particularly this one, this Annex E. I mentioned just 2 more things. I think what to build the Rome-based agencies have a crucial role to play, to build this CFS policy instruments, as Shantanu said, into the country strategies. That's fundamental. As well as member states, there is an idea here that was in the Annex that member states could develop voluntarily, of course, national implementation plans for the use and application. Yeah. So if there are a few countries that would be willing to do that, and with the support, of course, from the other participants in the CFS, that would be extremely helpful. And so let me say here, for the moment, that this is the approach that we could, you know, would respond to the priorities of the ground. That's the point. The small-scale food producer organization, indigenous peoples, women's, youth organization, they are facing multiple crises and emergencies now. We have severe problems to just, you know, they just will do in the CFS what is a priority for them on the ground. And this has always been, but this is now even more urgent. So we should not endeavor in a new assessment exercise. We should really go for especially how to use the CFS policy instruments for responding to this crisis of the pandemic, of the COVID-19, to have something practical that is useful to the people, to the realities. No? I also echo the remark from Mark. He's been in the monitoring for a long time in the CFS, to be careful with terms, because the monitoring concept that was almost practically negotiated, monitoring and accountability. It's not mandatory and evaluation, as many of you are more familiar with. It's monitoring and accountability. This mechanism, innovative monitoring mechanism that was finally agreed in the response to the CFS evaluation, is something where we need to depart from. We cannot question it. This would go against the fragile consensus that was reached at that time, as Ilya said earlier. So I think this is some points for the general approach. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, CSM, for your comments and also suggestion. I think is well taken. And also, I just would like to ensure all of you that this exercise, we don't have any intention to repeat the evaluation as we did in 2018 report, but it just only to promote the use and utilization of the CFS policy products at the country level. As you mentioned, that implementation is the key for our discussion. And also, as you mentioned about the CFS focal point at the country level, may I take your time a bit? I just would like to give an example. In Thailand, we also have the focal point of the CFS. And also at the country level, we also have, they call it National Committee on World Food Security, that they discuss on the issues, all the issues of the CFS that they have here in Rome, and they bring it back to discuss at the country level. And also, just only to give another example, because the CFS product is just only in English and the UN Rome UNR language. That's why the voluntary guideline on food system and nutrition that we just adopted now is being translated into Thai language, and also we use for the national dialogue of the food system summit during these months before the summit. Thank you very much. Just would like to share some experience. Now I give the floor to WHO, as I can recognize, and then CGIAR, and then Indonesia. WHO, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Thank you. Yeah, first of all, thank you for organizing this meeting. We are in support of what previous speakers have already expressed, so I don't have to repeat this. It's very important to have this informal working group and to continue working on this important issue. We think that CFS should have better knowledge of the uptake of its policy recommendations, and I would like to maybe underline the point made by FAO that it's important to also consider the influence the products have in policy making. And of course, then we need also at one point discuss, do we discuss about the whole product, or do we discuss about policy recommendations in the products, because the policy recommendations, the products cover several actors at country level, and but I don't want to go into this detail, but we need to be aware that this might have to be addressed at a certain point. So we think that it would be good to have a sound system of tracking the recommendations, and CFS should have a role in this, a policy monitoring role, which does not have to be done by the CFS or the CFS Secretariat per se, but could be done with the relevant partners, with the agency partners and other partners. And CFS would have more this coordination or oversight role of what happens within the scope of existing national policy monitoring systems. And WHO is focusing very much on the nutrition policy elements, and we are in the process of developing a strategy to support specifically the recently adopted voluntary guidelines on food systems and nutrition, and how to promote their use and uptake at country level. And so we would very much focus on the nutrition elements, and would like to contribute this also to the work of the informal working group. We are also doing this year our third global nutrition policy review at country level, which which does give important information and could be used as a kind of baseline also for the incorporation into national policy elements of these voluntary guidelines on food systems and nutrition. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are looking forward to continue our support to this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, WHO, for your comments and also suggestion. I think it's very valid and very, very useful. And also, I just would like to recall the meeting with the chair of the UN Nutrition, and also as Assistant Director General of WHO. We know that the CFS is not implementing agency, and we will not do that. And that's why we need to see the way how we partner with the UN's agencies to help us to bring the policies, CFS products to influence the policy making process at the country level. And that's why all the UN agencies that have the country office will help us and will support us. And we, you all of you are our champion to bring the policy products to influence the policy making at the country level. Thank you very much for your support. Now I give the floor to CGIAR Indonesia and then PSM. CGIAR, please.
Thank you, Chair. Let me first of all echo the statement from CSM and other speakers that I think the most important aspect of this work should be on use and application of CFS policy products, the indications in Annex C, etc. And of course, as other speakers have said, we need to raise the game on communications and advocacy, hopefully building on and using the IFAD database to assist that work. Now, colleagues, all members of the advisory group are subject to that competitive environment that Shantanu mentioned, and therefore we always are revising our performance management frameworks. Some of you may recall that the CGIAR system is recasting its portfolio this year. And as part of that, of course, we're revisiting the performance management framework. And let me just tell you the bits relevant to CFS. That framework discusses spheres of influence for its outputs and outcomes of CGIAR innovation. And there are 6 elements in that spheres of influence. But the one that is closest to CFS is, of course, policies. And that focuses on the number of policies, strategies, laws, regulations, budgets, investments, curricula modified, informed by CGIAR research in countries. And there are different levels of maturity. And that echoes, I think, a lot of the way that I'm sure the RBAs would wish to take forward the use and application of CFS policy products. And by the way, the CGIAR CFS annual report gives some examples along those lines of how that might be developed. Now, clearly, the RBAs have a key role in putting in place this follow-up to CFS policy products. Shantanu referred, of course, to the country strategies, the COSOPs, and Mark Maguire referred, and I think this is an important way to go, the survey we did, CFS did in 2014. Clearly, we need to follow up on similar types of activities, updates, surveys, in the same way, for example, that the RBAs with their country strategies effectively undertake surveys every few years of how those strategies are impacting in country decision-making, in policies and practices. So, Chair, let me leave it there for the minute. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Thank you very much, Rodney, for your comments. And also we recognize the importance of the research and also the work of the CGIAR at the country level. Thank you very much for your support. Now I give the floor to Indonesia, followed by PSM, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning to all. First of all, we would like to appreciate you and Secretariat and the Secretariat for this important meeting. Indeed, the issue of assessing the effectiveness of the products of CFS is important. For us, it is because of not only because of the CFS is a unique platform where all major stakeholders are here, but also because of the important products that they have produced. But in our view, that in terms of disseminating or socializing the products of UN agencies is not only the issue of CFS. It is the issue of all UN agencies. It's hardly, if you ask people on the street, they know about the UN resolution, for example. So it is not uncommon for us, but also it is a challenge for all of us. But anyway, CFS is unique. I think we can do more because of the nature of the major the multi-stakeholders nature. In that regard, I think the assessment, this exercise, the aims of the exercise should be clear. In our view, it should be aimed at raising awareness of the CFS and its products. It also should be aimed at promoting more use of the CS product on the ground. So I think the idea, I support the idea is to have the product more use on the ground by the stakeholders. And I think also that the aim should be promoting unity, togetherness among stakeholders. So we have to avoid divisiveness, naming and shaming, or even blaming others if we feel that they haven't implemented the CFS product. Some concrete suggestion, for example, I think some others have mentioned we should build or intensify cooperation with regional organization, for example, can have more dialogue because we know regional or sub-regional organizations know better of the situation on the ground or in their region. And I think you have mentioned it, Chair, we would like to see the translation of the product of CFS more to the national or local language, because those are the language that can be used, that are usually used by people on the ground, by farmers, villagers, so that they can understand what exactly, and then they can apply it directly on the ground. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, Indonesia, and we do hope that Indonesia also will take lead to translate the CFS policy products or voluntary guideline on food system and nutrition into Bahasa Indonesia as well, with your leadership of Indonesia, that can bring the voluntary guideline to the ground level. And also, as you mentioned about the regional organization, I think the regions that you come from, I think is ASEAN is one of the good example that using the CFS principle of the let's say responsible investment in agriculture at the moment, and perhaps the Secretary can tell more. Now I give the floor to PSM, please.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Morning, colleagues. Good discussion. Much appreciated listening to it. Focusing on what I see as being discussions on approach and scope, if you like, and then some of the details of what and how we should be moving forward. In that regard, it might be useful at some point if the Annex C of the evaluation is made available either as a link or as a short hard copy, because I think it will inform our thinking as we go forward. I do want to thank indeed Shantanu, Mark, Martin, and then latterly Rod on this discussion on, if you like, the approach issues and the message that's coming through. Don't go the full classic evaluation, effectiveness, sustainability, efficiency, if you like, OECD style guidelines for an evaluation, because we know what the issue is for us. It's the use and application of CFS products. Nevertheless, in that regard, when we're talking about use and application, I mean, I share CGR's comments and the point made by Mark that we are looking at effectiveness. And I think the ideas that were put forward in terms of in that 2014 survey, and that's been followed up by CGR's comments about surveys may be useful, bears consideration. So I think we need to look at some of the tools that have been used when in the evaluation context you're looking at effectiveness. It may not be a palatable word to some, but when you're talking about your effectiveness, well, your ability to have outreach and visibility, your ability to have influence policy. You are looking at that word effectiveness. So I think that is where I would be looking at. We're not looking in this at the issues of efficiency, which was Shantanel's comment from IFAD on the finance issue. We're not necessarily looking at sustainability, etc. But I think there's the scope there for looking how effective we are. And I think that this takes me into the next point that was being raised by the ambassador from the Netherlands, of getting the language of CFS products into UN documents, and particularly the Food System Summit, and I'll come to that. And it does bring me back to what the PSM was saying during the evaluation process, that what we're looking to see in terms of CFS products is that they are effective at country level, that they have an impact at country level, they can be used. And I think it's important that as we, and again, the comments on outreach and visibility is part of that, but it's also the language of the documents. And, you know, as, for example, we move forward now with the negotiations on agroecological and other innovative approaches, the language of that document and the phraseology is going to be important. And I'll tell you why, because thanks to the work of you, Chair, and the CFS and other colleagues, the CFS, as you said, is involved in the Food System Summit. And as the PSM representative, I'm on the action track number 3, nature positive production, which, as you would guess, is not a far cry from agroecological and other innovative approaches. And in fact, to come back on a comment made by the ambassador, I was very pleased at yesterday's Action Track 3 leadership meeting, chaired from Brazil by João Campari from the World Wildlife Fund. Very pleased that we had CFS Secretariat presentations at the meeting to all the leadership team that did focus on what the CFS is doing, its scope, and the products of the CFS. So that message got through to Action Track 3, Nature Positive Production. And also a very good point that was made by the CFS team on that call was that, you know, the CFS is in itself an example of a game-changing multi-stakeholder solution of how we can work in dialogue together. And the Food System Summit needs to take those examples of how you work in implementation of some of the game-changing solutions that the CFS has experience in that regard. But I go back to my point, nature positive production, the theme of Action Track 3, is looking at agroecology, is looking at regenerative agriculture, is looking at sustainable agricultural systems. All the topics that we're going to be looking at and already included in the draft 1, subject to negotiation. If we want Action Track 3 to start to share and develop those ideas, and what we say in the negotiations is going to have to understand that other context and use of CFS products. So conciseness of language, preciseness of effectiveness of ideas, and as we would say in nature positive production, a balance of approaches to sustainable agriculture would be needed. So I think there's the opportunity for the CFS to have an impact in the short term through something like the CFS, the Food System Summit work, but then with effective, well-languaged documentation going out to country level that can then go into country strategies and be applicable not only to the governments, but to all the other actors, civil society, private sector, country level. Many thanks, Chair, and we look forward to continuing this dialogue.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, PSM, for your comments and suggestion. I know that the CFS Secretariat now is working closely with the UN Food System Summit, but anyway, we need to work more to ensure that we can bring the issues, we can bring the work of the CFS to the action track leader teams, or to the chair of the action track, and also the presentations on the presence of the CFS Secretariat at the action track 2 is very useful, and that's why to ensure that all 5 action tracks, we need to engage with them closely and proactively. But now, before start Before starting the next round of the discussion, I would like to ask Secretary to captures or to respond and wrap up or answer the questions raised by the members from the first round. Now I give the floor to Chris, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And let me ask the CFS Secretariat team with me here to turn on their videos if they can. I want to make sure you know, there are about 10 of us, and I guarantee you we are working at or close to maximum capacity, frankly, overtime to develop that outreach, that awareness, the communications. We hired, where's Martin? Martin is down here in the bottom. Martin Schunk, young man currently in Berlin, we hired on to support our communications efforts along with Waiganjo and Jiroge, who is leading that work. And I hope in the past year, you've all noticed the number of events, the number of efforts that we have made to increase visibility of CFS. Last year, we held 2 extra bureau meetings. We held 4 special events actually that were not anticipated. So we are getting the message out. The chair is speaking at a number of events, or the number of invitations coming in is more than we can handle, in fact. And that should be visible. If it's not, we don't quantify that and report that back in any particular way, but we do have a robust communications and outreach strategy that is tied to our resource mobilization work. And I hope that is reflected. We do count on extra budgetary resources to pay for staff, to pay for the interpretation, the translation, the travel, and we have very generous contributions from the EU. Germany, as you know, funded the voluntary guidelines work that allowed for the consultations, et cetera. We are answerable and accountable to not only the RBAs who fund us and without whom we can't do what we do, but also to those who are giving extra budgetary contributions. So now let me go through and address some of the points made by speakers so far. The UN Food System Summit is, I think, very rightfully noted as an opportunity. And the chair and I and the entire team are making absolutely every effort to be to the point of being annoying, I think, with sharp elbows asserting the CFS role, the CFS architecture. I mean, remember in 2009, CFS was created as the response to almost 1 billion hungry, right? This was the unique multi-stakeholder platform. And so to have a summit planned where the CFS is, an afterthought, which has been addressed, but to have that dynamic is just, it makes you scratch your head. Now, why wasn't CFS made an action track leader? You have the head of GAIN, the head of EAT, the head of, or a senior person in WWF, a senior person of CARE, and the director of the International Center for Climate Change and Development leading those action tracks. Why would they be so interested in promoting the CFS as opposed to promoting their own institutions? The science group, why isn't the high-level panel of experts part of the science group? The chair was invited in, but in one of the action tracks, and certainly not in an institutional capacity. Why wasn't the CFS chair put in the advisory group from the start instead of being made a champion? Why wasn't CFS and CSM and PSM invited in from the start? They've since been, and that's largely due to your chairperson and the pushing that we've been doing. So the action tracks, the Secretariat has been invited, myself, and I've delegated to staff. So for example, yesterday at Action Track 3, we had a chance to brief on CSM. on CFS and our products. So you can rest assured we are doing absolutely everything we can to promote the CFS and its products, including the high-level panel of experts in those discussions. And Benoit will be joining the advisory committee meeting tomorrow. Now, I like Hans's idea about meetings in other places. We'll certainly look into that. But that will take, again, we need to be hosted. Travel is an issue, but virtually, if these things can be done, we'd certainly be welcome to explore those kind of possibilities. The chair has been invited to and has delivered a input for the HLPF meeting in July. And we've asked about the possibility of organizing some kind of side event or a speaking role for Benoit to represent the committee. We also are engaged with Agnes Calabata. The chair has spoken to her just last week. We have insisted that we have a prominent role in the pre-summit, which we have been promised we will, to be defined. But those opportunities are, they're not volunteered up front. We've actually had to push and push very hard, and with no embarrassment, because we know we have the legitimacy as a UN institution created by the membership in 2009, and we have a lot to show for the last 11 years of work since the reform. We have the flagship products, starting with the voluntary guidelines on the progressive realization of the right to food, the VGGTs, the RIE principles, the framework for action. We have 13 sets of policy recommendations, and we have 15, soon to be 16 HLPE reports, all of which are top notch and worthy of praise. So every time the staff and I are in meetings, we put those links in, we highlight CFS, and we are definitely making inroads on visibility and outreach with, as I said, more and more invites coming in, which reflects people's awareness that CFS is something of value, that it has the benefit of the governments who have negotiated with their advisors and other stakeholders very high quality products. And all of these groups, these action tracks and others, they don't have the benefit. Well, now there's more governments involved, but they don't have what we have, which is a platform for governments and others to negotiate around policy convergence and finding that middle ground. So communications clearly has been a high priority, and I hope you've noticed the quality and the outcomes. Now, the role of member states in this process was asked, and everything we do is at the under the supervision of the Bureau, and so obviously an open-ended working group with the chair of CFS leading this is within the governance structure of CFS. So we will have this conversation, we'll have more conversations, and then we will share with the Bureau possibly for an update and possible decisions on how to proceed next. In terms of resources, the CFS Secretariat has resources to deal with this without going beyond. We do intend to benefit from the RBAs, the evaluation staff, as had been mentioned by a couple of you. And if we need to hire additional staff, that's obviously done within the FAO's HR guidelines and within the constraints of the current budget that I'm managing. So we definitely appreciate the member states' support. We have, for the VGFSN, we have a plan in place, and we are talking with those in UN Nutrition to include the 3 Rome-based agencies on how to coordinate some of the very forward-leaning and very positive statements we've heard. You heard WFP give a very forward-leaning response at its last executive board on supporting the implementation and promotion of those voluntary guidelines. We just heard Marcella of WHO talking about their contribution. FAO wants to assist us with a digital platform to put information out and available for policymakers through our website to show the latest and greatest evidence and materials. And we'd like to see more technical guides for implementation done by key stakeholders, like the implementation guidelines done for the voluntary guidelines on the governance of tenure. Now, Molly, you put a very good thing in the chat, which is, and it's similar to what Brian Baldwin of PSM was saying. The language and the planning in our, the implementation, utilization, effectiveness, these shouldn't be afterthoughts that come only, on day one after adoption of a U.S. policy, or sorry, CFS policy product. They should be thought of as we're going forward. So Molly's statement is we should already plan at the time of formulation to include how to put them in use. That's very smart thinking, and that's certainly what we are considering within the Secretariat. Translations of documents, yes, we again, those, there is a price tag for translation. We obviously try to translate everything into the FAO's official languages, but if there are others who want to help us translate into Bahasa or into Portuguese or into other languages that are not FAO languages, not only would we welcome your help in doing that, or the RBA's help in doing that, or in donors' help. We have a multi-donor trust fund for the implementation of the MyPow. And so any money helps us, and we certainly would put that towards translations if we get those resources. So a couple of things. The game changers, we definitely are looking to promote the notion of CFS-like platforms at country level, and that is done. The chair has spoken to Agnes Calabata. They recognize that idea and are open to it. We, as Secretariat, we've reached out to David Nabarro for the dialogues to emphasize how important it is for him and these dialogues to consider CFS products. So we have a new 2-page communications document on the VGFSN that we will be sharing within a couple of days. And we already have a document that highlights 2 pages. It's on our website on the front page. If you've not seen it, please do take a look, which highlights our key CFS products very specifically for the summit. And so we'll push those game changers. We also will rely on governments to emphasize this in the governing bodies of the RBAs and other agencies, right? The FAO arguably has done the most to promote the VGGT, for example. And there are implementation guides, there are ample examples of trainings, and there's a lot to show for land tenure and land governments moving forward with the help of FAO. Now, yesterday I heard the briefing on the strategic framework, and the land tenure doesn't appear, and that unit is basically being dried up. So, how important is land tenure and the VGGTs? So these are the kind of things that really we're looking for support, not only from the RBAs and other advisory group members, but of course from the governments, funding, promotion, and so forth. So I'll leave it at that for now, Mr. Chair. There's a lot to unpack and talk about further, but we're certainly pushing as hard as we can on the outreach and communications, and then we'll see what people want to do with a more systematic approach on effectiveness.
Thank you very much, Secretary, and also the whole team of the Secretariat to support the work of the committees and its participants and also others, our stakeholders. Now, I would like to give the second round of the discussion, and now if any others members, advisory group, ad hoc advisory groups, or any one of those who would like to take the floor, please feel free to raise your hand. And also, I think most of the questions raised by the previous speakers, I assume, is already responded by the secretary. Now, I would like to give the floor to all of you again for the second round of the discussion. Okay, I don't see any hand. I assume that the discussion today is, I think is, once we have a inclusive discussion, it really bring better understandings to all of you what we're going to move further step for these informal for this working group on effectiveness of CFS. And today I would like to take this opportunity to thank to all of you for this very interesting and fruitful discussion, and also for your great support that have been made to discuss during today in order to tackle the current challenges that we have been facing at the moment, and also to strengthen the effectiveness of CFS in the functioning of the CFS in order to ensure its full relevance with the UN system and also the governance of the World Food Securities, and also to make sure that the work of the CFS and CFS policy products can also influence the policy making at the country level. And also with your support, with your contribution, we also we can translate the CFS policy products into action at the country level, and all of you can help us to promote the use and utilization of the CFS products at the country level. And after this meeting, I will ask the Secretariat to prepare the summary of the meeting, and also we will share with all of you and also we will update you in the upcoming Bureau and Advisory Group meeting that I think it already scheduled on 6th of April. And we are sure that we will have a full support from the Bureau members, alternate, and also advisory group, advisory committee members. Following the Bureau meeting, what's next? Once the Bureau agree, and we will consider holding a follow-up meeting for this group once we have a clear objective, once we have a clear procedures, we have a clear plan what we will do. We will have another meeting to continue our discussion, and also to see the clear plan what we will do to strengthen the effectiveness of the CFS, especially at this very important moment. And also this year, as all of you know, that we will have the Food System Summit, since the CFS is one of the architectures in the UN system, and to ensure that CFS is relevant to the Food System Summit and also can provide support. And thank you very much again for your contribution for today. And as I mentioned at the beginnings, if we're talking about the effectiveness of CFS, we have to start with ourselves. And that's why today we say that we would like to spend our 2 hours for discussion, but now it's 10:38. At least we can manage to finish our meeting just only, we spend time only 1 hour and 38 minutes, and then we can have a conclusion of this meeting, and then we will continue our discussion. And thank you very much, and I hope we will see you again on 6th of April. And if you have any further comments, further suggestion, please feel free to call us. Please feel free to contact me or Chris and CFS Secretariat. And if you have any written comments, also please feel free to send to the CFS Secretariat as well. Oh, sorry, I see the hand of CSM, please.
Yeah, very sorry, Chair.
It's okay.
Sorry, I just need a bit of clarification because it's not clear to me where we are going from here.
Yep.
Also, it's not clear what is the focus. I think there have been different proposals in this discussion. I think the majority has clearly said that we should focus on use and application, or as Indonesia put it, the effectiveness of the use and application of CFS policy outcomes. But
Yep.
it's not clear from what we heard afterwards how would be the approach and the scope, as Brian said. This was the discussion, no? But now it's not clear where we are going.
Okay.
And I think it would be helpful both in terms of if there is any agreement. I also see that there are not many member states today here. So what is the way forward and for the further discussion? And I really would like to reiterate that it's not an interest of our constituencies so far to embark in a new assessment of effectiveness of the CFS in general, no, to be redundant to the evaluation,
Yep.
but to build on it. I think so. I think that would be good to have a bit of a more clarity, and as you know, not all of us are very convinced about the Food System Summit as an opportunity. So the controversies there are also just there. No, it's not settled at all.
Yeah. Thank you, CSM. As today is the open meeting, and we would like to listen to all of you, and we are now we have got several comments and also ideas, suggestions that you gave it to us. And as I mentioned earlier, after the meeting today, I will ask the secretary to prepare a summary note for us. And also after that, the summary note will be presented at the Bureau, at the upcoming Bureau and Advisory Group meeting on 6th of April. And then after the Bureau meeting, we will have a clear direction. As you know that one of the 7 key elements of the evaluation report in 2018, whatever we are going to do to have a clear direction. And that's why on this particular issue as well, we need to make sure that we have a clear direction, what we want to do in terms of to promote the use and utilization, or to how to increase the effectiveness. And since the committees is a member driven, and also is a inclusive multi-stakeholders platform, to ensure that we are listening to all of you, and your voice are very important for us. And that's why after the meeting, we will have the summary note and we will share with all of you, and we will have a further discussion on 6th of April. Since we have a clear direction, we have a clear guidance from all of you, I think we can start our action immediately with partnering with Rome-based agencies, with other UN agency, UN Nutrition, and also with all of you as members, as the key stakeholders of CFS, because we need a corrective action from all of you to move forward if we want to increase the effectiveness of the CFS. I hope that my answers is clear for you, and that's why after have a summary note, we will have further discussion on 6th of April, and then we hope that we can continue our further work. Hope that is clear. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for today. And now I think the meeting, thank you again for your contribution and support to the work of the CFS. And then we are looking forward to seeing you on 6th of April for Bureau and Advisory Group meeting. For today, thank you, and thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Take care.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Chair.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.